Hey everybody, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George-Affleck.
And it's time for...
Dum-dum.
UnSpun.
Oh my God! Did you say Doug Dome? Doug Dome?
Doug Dome?
Oh!
Doug McCallum. Doug Dome.
16,000 people. We're turning Doug Dome into a giant mud bath.
I mean, I gotta tell
you,
I am taking a lot of heat on this one because I'm like smart. I think it's like I had France. I've been filling in at CKNW this week, and I had Francis Bula on, and we got into it. And I was like, no, I totally see what's going on here. He's totally diverting the conversation away from all his foibles. And what do the other guys have? I mean, now I remember him. And who else is running for mayor in Surrey now? I don't know. But and you know, guess what? All he has to say is, "Excuse me, I got a new police force, and I changed and we built a SkyTrain. You know, don't tell me I can't do this. You know, they'll say, oh well, you didn't do these things. Hey, the two biggest things I promised in the last election, check them off. I mean, you know, he's a very old-fashioned style politician, but you know what? It seems to work for him in Surrey because he keeps winning.
I'm going to agree with you here, and I really believe that this is the epitome of what we started this podcast for. This is spin. This is how you take all of the attention away from the fact that you are expected in court for fraud and mischief, and get people talking about a debate over whether it should be a 60,000 person stadium, what BC Place is like, or if it should be more like Safeco, because that's how I replied to it. I'm like, I actually think that we need a more like Safeco. And I did it with such sarcasm, and then people start coming at me. You should put it, we need a stadium by the waterfront. That's what we need. I'm like, oh God, okay. Yeah, okay. Why don't you mansplain some more about sports in Vancouver to me? I mean, it was just like, okay. But honest to God, like how masterfully has this rolled out? You can take all the heat, or people can come at you with all the heat they want, but in a crisis communication scenario, flip the script. And that's what McCallum just did. They flipped it.
I don't want to bring up the guy down south who does it all the time, but he's been quite successful at it. You know, and it's, but you know, in the case of Doug McCallum, I mean, he can argue that he people say, oh, there's no money for that. I said to Francis, and I'll say to you, I'm saying to anybody, excuse me, first you announce it, then you figure out the math on it. And here's the thing, federal and provincial governments want to win in Surrey, in the Valley. They need Surrey. NDP needs Surrey. You don't think NDP is going to cough up some cash for this to win the next election? Of course they will. If that
was the argument.
I can't imagine that he hasn't done some polling on this. Of course he has.
But that's the argument that people were making. It's like the government owns BC Place. Why would they put money in another stadium? For precisely the reasons, like, and stadium aside, but for precisely the reason you point out there, the NDP or whatever provincial government needs the fastest growing corner of our province, which is Surrey. I mean, it just is. And
where do you think?
Fascinating to me.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, well, just the downtown.
A slight delay with you being at your beautiful lake. So,
I know.
For those who are watching. My background's a painting, and yours is a beautiful lake. I should get a painting of a lake, and then I'll be the same as you. Anyway,
I'll take a picture for you. You've been here, so I don't feel bad. So,
and then we'll be like in the same place.
That's right. But what I was trying to put out there is there's a huge chunk of this province that isn't downtown centric, right? Like there's a big voting public who we get people saying all the time, don't we, George? We get people all the time who reach out to us at george_affleck or at Jody Vance or at UnSpun Podcast on Twitter, right? _affleck, who say like, why do you guys always talk about Vancouver? Well, we get frustrated by the politics of Vancouver because it's a big money hole right now. But in speaking to what we're seeing in Surrey, there are a lot of people who would be very excited about the concept of not having 100%. To come all the way downtown to see a concert
100%.
and or not going all the way out deep into that. Right. right? There's a lot here.
Absolutely. That is the thing. I don't think people are understanding this. Not only will they steal business away from GM Place, BC Place, or whatever, no, what's it called? Rogers Arena, BC Place,
right?
The Convention Center, the Pacific Coliseum, all four of those venues who rely a huge amount on people from south of the Fraser. Those people are going to go to the boat show will move there, auto show, motorcycle shows, all those shows will go there, home shows. Where does the home show want to be? In the place where they're building homes or the place they're building apartments? I mean, it's ridiculous.
Or the place where it costs...
The math is there. The math is there.
It's $50 to park around BC Place. Okay, I'm exaggerating. It's $40 to park your car for an event down there. So on top of the cost of the event, on top of the cost, the ridiculous amount it is for a hot dog, or if you went to the weekend concert, the weekend, they ran out of water. So they sold people cups and said, line up at the water fountain. I mean, that's the type of monopoly that's going on in that building. So don't even get me started on, and there are really great people that work in these venues. I'm not down in that. But the fact is, having a monopoly on anything.
A lot of them live in Surrey. Guess where they're going to work now.
Right? And how about a place that isn't 60,000 people? How about a place that's somewhere in between the 19,000 and the 60,000? I think there's a huge argument for having a venue like Safeco, because I did put that out there with some meaning behind it, because there's every now and then it's floated that we should have a Major League Baseball team, but yet there's no place for one to play. I miss Empire Stadium. I don't know about you. It dates me, but I loved that place. I loved it.
Oh, yeah. It was great for concerts and for football. Yeah, I think he's saying 60,000, but, you know, you don't have to hold him to that math. I believe this is going to get done. I really do. I think I totally could see, I can envision what he's saying. And I know people don't like Doug McCallum and they think he's whatever. I say this is smart. I think it's really, I don't think, and in Vancouverites complaining about it, it's ridiculous election problems. Yeah, you live in Vancouver. Of course, a new stadium in Vancouver is ridiculous. That's not what we're saying. This is Surrey. Yeah. This is the Valley. Yeah. This is where we have 20,000 people moving to every year, year in, year out. Come on. You're telling me that and their families and all that stuff. That's like crazy.
Well, it's like anybody who's spent a significant amount of time living in this beautiful corner of the planet, which is what we have had the great fortune of, you and I have had the fortune of doing, knows that the growth is wild to witness. I mean, I look at the old pictures of downtown Vancouver. I don't really recognize the Manhattan. We'll get into the Manhattan in a minute, but even in Tsawwassen, where I grew up, my family still lives out in Tsawwassen. Delta used to be mostly farming. I mean, I remember a time in Richmond, where it was like all farmland. It was some of the most fertile land, but now it's all condos because the density has just exploded and the population has exploded and the community is growing. And watching the communities in and around the Lower Mainland become more metropolitan in their own right. Did you see the note Dylan Kruger put out on Twitter? Did you see that
I said
tweet?
Ouch to it. I said ouch.
I gotta find it. Yeah, hold on.
Yeah, he said basically, come on, Vancouver takes about 3 years to build a 6-story building. Surrey just approved 3 towers in a week. Come on, Vancouver.
Right.
So you're. I think he said something like you're done or you're toast. What did he say?
He said Vancouver is a city in decline. Vancouver squabbles with itself over building 6 stories on arterials, while Surrey approves 3 high-rises a week. Vancouver is dead. The future is south of the Fraser. And that is Dylan Kruger, who is a Delta city councillor, born and raised and fighting to keep young families in our communities. He is the youngest city council person at the time of his election. He was the youngest ever. He's a really great voice. And I replied to that tweet because I think it's a bold tweet for sure. And I said, I appreciate what you're saying here, Dylan, except for that last line, because where he said Vancouver is dead, the future is south of the Fraser. Having lived south of the Fraser, I can speak to living on both sides, and Vancouver is not dead to me, and I will fight for my city. My born and raised Vancouverite, grew up in Tsawwassen. Until they figure out that tunnel or that bridge, I have a very big problem living south of the Fraser, because if I'm late for my job, I'm fired. So there's that. They're like, we got to fix what's broken, not cast barbs. But I like the fact that Dylan's coming out swinging on just how brutal it is to get anything done in Vancouver.
I'd be curious to see what he thinks about the stadium. Has he commented? Because he's Delta. Delta is South Delta, North Delta. North Delta, is basically Surrey. And, I think a stadium there would be also beneficial to Delta. So you're talking a huge area here, and Langley.
It's big. And there's that new casino going where the Town and Country used to be, just on the south side of the tunnel. Like, that's going to be restaurants and obviously a casino, but also probably a venue, I'm assuming. I'm not sure. But it's going to bring people that would be...
past there.
Yeah. It's a much more inexpensive night out on the town from South Surrey, White Rock, Tawasin, all around North Delta, Ladner, and there's some disposable cha-ching out there. People not wanting to have to go all the way into town and, struggling to get home at night. Like, it's a thing.
It's true. And, obviously it's election time and Dylan's doing his thing. He's obviously figuring out who his audience is, and Doug McCallum's figured out his for his Doug Dome, or whatever you want to call it, McCallum City, or what do we call it?
I
saw
Doug Dome.
A whole bunch of Jazz did a thing on it. So you got 100 responses to that. What should we name it? And you got 100 people with recommendations. So it just that resonates, and I think that you're getting coverage. So we talk about media coverage, and you can buy the ads, or you can do something big and get PR. And that's what Doug McCallum's done. So and
it's working, and so's Dylan. That's what Dylan's doing too.
Yep.
And lots of traction on the bomb that he dropped there, the hot take that Vancouver is dead. And then it's Dale Flood chimed in here saying, all over Burnaby there are straight arm cranes too. Very impressed with the transit orientated development near Edmonds in the Millennium Line. And we talk often about the difference in the skyline when you're driving into town and it's Vancouver and then it's Burnaby, and Burnaby is like a little mini Manhattan, right? It is two
of them, Brentwood and Metrotown. They've got two Manhattans.
Yeah. Yep. It's a lot. Well, let's talk about. We actually saw. I'm gonna give props to the current mayor of Vancouver. You're sitting down, George. You ready? Are you ready?
Yeah, I am. What?
He didn't write it in a press release. He didn't write a letter. He had a press conference to thank other people. Yeah, he did. He had a press conference to do, not a lot, but just he was there. He was present. I haven't seen him in a while, so it must be.
I forgot, he looked quite different actually. He had his hair all slicked back. But the problem is what he said was what people don't want to hear, which is it's gonna take longer than we thought to dismantle the downtown east side, which you and I have talked about in the show, and I've said, because I have obviously good connections, and I've said there is a process they're going through with regards to photographing all the items, and they're boxing it up and putting it in storage, and they're being very, very careful about this because they don't want anybody to say, the staff don't want anybody to say, you stole my stuff or whatever. Whether or not,
and they're trying to do it with
their stuff
and being ethical about it, because it's an absolute disaster that you frankly called 183 episodes ago. You said this is only getting worse. It's only going to grow. It's only going to get more dangerous, and it's only going to get harder to take apart with every single second. And we were starting this podcast when Oppenheimer Park was a real problem. And you said, allowing this to grow is going to be an absolute nightmare for the city. And here we are. Mm-hmm. It's a nightmare. It is an absolute nightmare. I feel for everybody.
And I wrote my column for Vancouver is Awesome. That this is a year and a half ago. I said tent cities. I said specifically in tent cities and parks, because I never foresaw that Hastings would be a tent city, but they would exemplify the mayor's time in this 4-year term. It would be his Achilles heel, and it is. This is what's going to probably lose him. If he loses, it's because of this issue, 100%.
Right.
And him holding that press conference, well, that's great. I don't think it's what people who are going to be voting wanted to hear. I think they want. And Melissa came on today. Melissa DeGenova. Yeah. She came on this afternoon, and I followed her with Jean Swanson on CKNW today, and Melissa's like, yeah, it's got to be faster. Even though we know the facts are, it's not possible to do it faster. But it'll be done in about 4 weeks, just before the election. So we'll see how the mayor handles that, but that might be too late because, the polling coming in is pretty hard. And I get some emails recently that are, when you go on air at CKNW, as you know, you get a bigger audience that are sending you information about stuff when you do a story. And so it's interesting to see all these people emailing me who are Kennedy-Stewart supporters and saying, nope, not again. And they were Gregor Robertson supporters, and they're going, nope.
Really?
And they're saying they're going to go with Ken Sim, most of them are saying.
There you go. Well, you did say that, they were so close in that last election, were Ken Sim and Kennedy-Stewart. What was it, like 700 votes or
900
whatever?
votes or 700, I think.
900? Yeah, like under 1,000, let's say.
I can't remember. Yeah, it was under 1,000.
But so now it remains to be seen how motivated voters might be, given how captive we've all been these last 2 years, paying attention to a news cycle that we never did. I mean, you and I did, but Joe and Jim Public probably didn't. And now it's like really hard to miss what's broken. I mean, and looking at back to the downtown east side, and there's literally nowhere for anybody to go. They've opened, like, I was watching Global News, and I don't know these numbers. I haven't independently confirmed what the numbers are, but it's like they've opened 45 SRO spaces for the hundreds of people who are living in tents down on the downtown east side. Like, there's no place for people to go. And I'm going to go back to a tweet from back when the Celebration of Light was on, and you went to one of those cabanas, the VIP tents down at the Celebration of Light. It's not like we don't have the technology to provide some semblance of temporary shelter that isn't.
Well, you sound like Gene Swanson now, but okay.
Okay, is that what she said? I didn't hear it today because obviously I'm at the lake enjoying myself.
Remind us that. She said by Canby Bridge, that space that we have there. Are you drinking? Is that booze?
No, it's a San Pellegrino.
Okay.
No sugar.
Little rhubarb vodka gin in there.
Little rhubarb gin in there. How did you know, George?
Because I know what you like. No, it's I talk about this all the time, and I get heat from people like Sarah Blythe, and I talk about Michael Schellenberg's book, The San Francisco, and a big part of that book talks about the housing first doesn't work. It's not about the housing, and it's a core. But he talks about policing a lot and about arresting people who are the really bad people. Those 200 people that we know exist that are mostly down on the downtown east side, who have been arrested 50 times in the last 6 months.
Prolific offenders.
The prolific offenders. They're stealing bikes. They're selling drugs. They're selling weapons. These are the people with, like, these machetes. Where are these machetes coming from? Somebody's finding them and selling them, or they're those gardening implements that we took. That John Cooper brought up. Oh, that's not a machete. That's a gardening implement. But hey, so if they're getting machetes, where are they getting them from? They're getting them from those people that they can't seem to be able to contain. But of course, we don't want to arrest people. And then there's the whole drug addiction, and then it's housing first is proven to fail as a policy on its own.
All right, I'm going to jump in on that though. But if you're clearing the tent city, and it's not and you can't provide even temporary housing, you have the expectation of where will these people then go? Like, take the politics out, take what's been written about before out, take the perspective of one extreme to the other out. What do you do if you're that guy who's found himself not a prolific offender, maybe not even an addict, but just somebody who just has nothing and is sitting there going like, okay, I will move, I will leave, but where do you want me to go? Where am I to go? That's the part that I struggle with. Well, because I want there to be at least somewhere in the short term. Here's a shower. Here's a toilet.
You're assuming these people are the ones that are. I think there's a misconception here that the people that are on that street and the ones that go in parks are the homeless people that we always go after. There is a core homeless number in the city, street homeless, that has not changed that much. It's I think it's 300-400. And before, they used to be spread around the city, and they still are. There's still lots of those people out there. They live in Stanley Park. You never find them. They're like invisible in there. They have their roots. They don't want to live in these places. If you remember back to Strathcona, the people that were like the lifetime homeless people, some of them, like, I don't want to be in there. And so you'd see these people pulling up with campers. Remember in Strathcona?
I do. But campers. See, you're taking me back to your. You're taking me back to your corner, though. I believe that there is at least
they're not the same
person.
People.
But I want to know where that one person should go. Like, where is that person expected to go? If it were me, and this is me being my unspun self, and I'm naive, I get it, but I throw spaghetti at the wall and I see if it sticks. If there was a temporary shelter that, okay, but let's talk about the one that has nowhere, right?
Yeah, okay.
If there was a place, and it doesn't need to be underneath the Canby Street Bridge, but let's just say for shits and giggles, sorry, there's your E, that it's one of those temporary tent structures that gathers almost like an event, that you're bringing the people together that have to go through some sort of screening because they agree to that, to come into a place in a space where you're going to.
Great. Vancouver is now the place where everybody gets to come and live for free.
Instead of telling, no, wait. Let's fight about this, but let's do so respectfully, because I want you to answer my question first. Okay. Where would you have that person go when they have nothing? They have been living on the street, rough, haven't had a shower in maybe months, have no clean clothes, have been like looking not their best self, let's say, probably smelling worse, have nowhere to go, no job, can't get a job because of the way they look and smell, want help, can't get it because they don't have an address to give somebody a, where does that person go? Maybe we start with creating a place where that person can go. Where do they go?
Is that you're asking me this question? Well, I would say that first you have to find out who they are. And that's where it becomes a big question mark. And I think that we're being confused by a lot of the people that are down there about where these people are coming from, who they are, what their circumstances are. I believe that their circumstances, a lot of them, are not as dire sometimes. There are people who are in significant dire straits, but there's a lot of people that are coming here because they heard they can come, because they can get free drugs, free furniture, free food, free clothes. They have chefs that come into that place. Everything is there. There's a drug dispensing machine. And I'm not saying there shouldn't be these things, but if it becomes something that you say, come one, come all, pitch your tent on our sidewalk. We won't arrest you. We'll let you do this. Put your tent.
I'm not suggesting that that's an answer. Please don't assume that I'm saying that. I'm not saying that.
No, but this is the challenge we have. It's, first of all, and now we're not even really allowed to ask for identification or request this stuff, because then your Pivot Legal Society comes after you for harassing people. And we're
my
in this
suggestion
quagmire just let me finish. This is a problem that the city has taken this lackadaisical approach for so long, and now they're pushing hard. And I think this isn't coming from the politicians. This is coming from staff. This comes thanks to the fire department saying, this is a fire hazard. So that's good. That's a good hook.
I get that.
We've got a reason.
I'm not arguing. I'm not arguing clearing the streets. I'm not arguing about the fire risk. I'm saying, and when I ask about identifying the individual, that individual that needs the help, that could be part of the, if you want a place to clean up and safely stay while you can get to your next level in life where you can be self-supportive, that is the not the barrier, but the way to get into that environment is to identify yourself, is to agree to the terms of use of this, city funded space. Like I've done a bunch of events down on the downtown east side with plenty. My turn. Plenty of places.
My turn.
And I've seen
organizations telling them not to do that. They got them saying, don't do that, because then you get your funding. And it's like they've created this whole culture down in the downtown east side that makes it impossible to solve the problem.
So what I was going to say there at the end there was, when I did like the Plenty of Plates events, and I looked in the eyes of people who were just having a hot meal served to them in a restaurant setting, because we were doing the serving, there were certainly some people there that need 24/7, 365 mental health supports, probably would need to live in an environment that is under lock and key, frankly, that they need to be kept secure in terms of making sure that they had the meds that would help support them. There's some high risk people in there for sure. But then there are others that were just, for whatever reason, they've lived this way their whole life. They've always lived in poverty, and they're just trying to make ends meet in a time where affordability is crushing everybody. And it's just hit this one segment of society really, really hard. I think that's the message I'm trying to put forward, is these are different times in this pandemic and wartime and politicization and divisiveness. Like, what can we do in the immediate, I think, is my question, for those who aren't the ones that are coming here for the chef and the free drugs. My air quotes are up. what about the people that fall through the cracks? Like we don't really have anything set up because it's being overwhelmed by the ones that you're putting forward as a very valid example. Like you and I agree largely on much of this.
Well, I mean, there's 35 to 50,000 units that weren't built. And we've talked about this over the last 30 years because of housing policies.
Right.
There are 2,500 homeless people, homeless, not street homeless, homeless. Remember, we got to define this. There are about 400 street homeless people in Vancouver. 400 people that a big chunk of those some of them have places to live. They don't want to live there, but those are the people you prioritize. But you also prioritize, and the city does do this, and the organizations do this. They prioritize women or people who are in dire straits. But sometimes you can't get everybody. And there's these prolific offenders that we talked about who are preying on the most vulnerable, who are the ones who maybe not even on the margins yet, but they certainly will be if they get enough crack and heroin inside them. And that's what their job is, to get these people hooked on drugs so they can use them for horrible things. I mean, basically human trafficking in our own city, on the sidewalks of our city. This is what's happening, and we're letting it happen because we feel bad about taking down their tents. No, there's a problem down here. It's out of control. It's anarchy, and it needs to be dealt with. And but I support the process they're going through. It shouldn't have had to get this point, though. The city let it happen. Right. Now they have to untangle this mess that they created because they were not tenacious in the policy that used to exist, which was to move along at 7 a.m., get your tent off the sidewalk, get your tent out of the park. I'm sorry you're homeless. How can we help you? Here are the facilities you can meet for the day. You can hang out here for the day. We'll try to find you a home. But for now, you need to get off the sidewalk and you need to get out of our park so our kids can play here and that guy can play baseball and et cetera, et cetera. And I can walk and shop on a sidewalk and not feel intimidated by people who are selling drugs and ripping apart bicycles to sell, and that they stolen from my backyard downtown several times on where I live here. It's out of control. It's anarchy, and the city hasn't taken responsibility for too long, and now they are. But it's not coming from the politicians. It's coming from the staff, who are like the fire department, the police department, and engineering are driving this forward. Maybe because of staff changes. We got a new head of engineering. We've got a new fire chief, and a fairly new police chief. Maybe it's them that's driving this agenda. I don't know, but I don't get a sense it's Kennedy-Stewart.
Right. And I have to chime in here on something that I think I put on Twitter, but I didn't say last week here on the show, because I got a 14-year-old. He's 6'1" now. He's a big, tall 14-year-old, very capable, good kid, can free range all over the place, has been for years now. But late last week, he, just after 9:15, so the sun had just gone down, said, "I'm just going to go walk down to the beach, Mom." And I was like, no. If he was with a friend, I would have said yes, but he was going to go by himself with his headphones and just go listen to music and go. And that's the first time I was like, not safe, but it's not safe. I found myself really heartbroken over the fact that I've always kind of held on to that, we're all right, right? I don't feel like that now when I'm hearing more and more and not as many being reported as should be. So my message is to the people who are finding themselves abused in some way in their neighborhood and not calling it in, thinking it can't help to call it into police, call it in. It gets more people looking around and knowing what's going on. And you've said it so many times that not having people on the streets, having the eyeballs on the streets, you said it about, always go back to the Granville Entertainment District because you're like, put patios here, eyeballs, people are watching. If people aren't watching, shit happens, and that's when the bad stuff happens. So I mean,
graffiti.
We might
sound
like we're fighting, but I've said you're right, George, about 5 times in this conversation. So I'm pointing at so many of the things. And by the way, you did answer my question of where do you go? Because with the move along, you can go to this shelter for the day. You can have a place to wash up and have a meal that's provided for you. We can find out more about your housing needs, and we can help get you into housing like that at 8th and Arbutus that's hopefully being built at some time in the next 10 years.
Not if you elect team, but
Really? You think they bust that?
Oh yeah, it's part of their plan. It's their mandate. If they 100% don't want that. It's literally some of their backyard. I don't know.
Right.
it's all we'll see. We'll see on October 16th and see what happens when we know who our mayor is in council. Will it be the same people or will it be a bunch of newbies? We shall see.
Only
time will tell. Only time will tell.
It will be your birthday, though. We should have a birthday party. We shall, October 15th, 2022, George Affleck's birthday.
That's right. I'm on CTV with that night. So with Diane Watts, so that'll be interesting because for Vancouver and Surrey, it'll be the most interesting races. Victoria's interesting too, but it'll be a lively night, and maybe I'll have some shot glasses and some under the desk and during the commercial breaks, and we'll do some.
I think we're going to get you some rhubarb gin. I think that's what's going to happen, just to bring things full circle. And maybe you'll come on. Is it an exclusive thing with CTV, or are you allowed to come on with me and Linda on our new show?
No, I don't have exclusivity with anybody, Jody.
Consider yourself booked on the Thursday. On the Thursday after the municipal elections, you can give us the debrief on what we can expect from who lands where. It's going to be interesting, man. Okay, follow George on Twitter, George. Everybody just turned off their headphones like, damn that man.
It's windy over here.
Yeah, at Jody Vance on Twitter, at UnSpun Podcast. Of course, go to unspunpodcast.com. Click on subscribe, because wouldn't you want this in your inbox every week?
And Jody, like I said last year, go jump in a lake.
Bye.
Really?
Bye, George.
Bye. Bye.
I'm going to go off that dock right there. See that right there?